We're going handheld today for reasons that are going to become obvious in a second. And so I apologize for any jiggling of the camera. A while back, somebody asked if I could kind of walk you through the parts of the loom. And so I'm going to do that now. And I want to make really clear that these are the parts of a shacked loom, which are not going to be the same on other brands of loom. However, the basics of looms tend to be pretty much the same because you have to keep in mind always the job of the loom, which is to hold warp threads under tension from the back of the loom to the front of the loom so that you can get a clean shed when you raise the shafts and pass the shuttle through the shed. So let's talk about the basic frame of the loom. So on this shaft loom, I have got, this is what's called this whole unit of a castle side and harness channels. This whole thing is called the castle. It's got a rear castle brace and a front castle brace, but this is basically the box that holds the shafts or harnesses as they go up and down. So the castle is a really important aspect of any floor loom. And this is what's called a high castle loom because it's raised up. It is at least 6 to 8 inches higher than the top of the shafts. Shaft used to make a low castle standard floor loom, and its top is about here, and it didn't have this handy tray at the top. Uh, this tray lifts completely off. Sorry, it's full of my junk, but you can see this. You can see this screw here as I point at it. And there's another one on the other side. So I just loosen these and I can lift this whole tray off the top, which I only need to do if I need to add more heddles to the shaft or if I need to do some repairs on this. So this thing in the middle that holds the shafts is all called the castle. The castle itself does not move while you weave, though the shafts in it go up and down. Continuing our exploration, there are a pair of front legs that hold the front beam, and similarly, a pair of rear legs that hold the rear beam. And on shaft looms, the front and rear beams are identical and they come completely off, which is something I take great advantage of when I am warping my loom. It allows me to get in, because remember, I have to lean over this warp beam to get to the heddles to thread them, either from the front or the back. Uh, so it's a big plus that the front and rear beams come off until you forget, which I seem to do every single time, and try to move the loom and you grab it by the beams and the beams come off. So the front and back beams are holding my warp threads or my woven cloth in their respective positions. And again, the beams and the sides, the legs that hold them up, do not move during weaving. Uh, on a shaft floor loom, there's also this wonderful feature where you can fold in the back legs, this support here. Notice how it's got multiple holes in it and a knob here. If I needed, for instance, to get this loom through a 24-inch doorway, I would simply unscrew this knob, fold the leg so that it's completely vertical instead of at a slant the way it is now, and then I would reattach the knob through one of these holes. Do that on both sides, and you can get a very big loom through a pretty narrow door. It's, again, one of those wonderful features that Barry Schacht was thinking about when he designed this lovely loom. So, as I said, these are the parts that stay pretty much in place. They do not move during weaving because their job is just to hold everything steady. And they do a very good job of it. In fact, you don't want to take off the high castle tray unless you need to, and you don't want to leave it off while you're weaving because it adds to the structural integrity of the loom. let's look at the parts that do move while you're weaving. We've talked about the shafts that hold the heddles, and you can see some of my warp ends from the last project still going through the heddles. The shafts, of course, go up and down and make and change the shed depending on the weave structure of the cloth you're making. Underneath, I'm going to just go ahead and get all these warp ends out of the way. Underneath the shafts are what Schacht calls a jack and lamb assembly. So in the middle, you can see what are called jack risers, and they connect at the bottom of the shaft. I want you to notice something else, that the connection of the shaft to the jack riser is right in the center, and this heddle bar hook that holds the heddle bar in place is slightly off center. That can be a little disconcerting, at least for people like me. Okay, so in the middle, we've got jack risers, these two pieces of metal. And then on either side of it, we've got a jack here and a jack here. And they have more metal pieces on their farther ends right next to the castle side. And then you've got a long lamb that has to have holes directly above each treadle, because the holes connect are the connection point for the tie-up cords, which go into the shaft, into a slit in the treadle. And this is how I'm going to raise and lower a harness. So let's try one of these. Okay, I want to do one that's at the back, and I can't remember what they are anymore. Okay, so I am pressing down. Actually, let's try this one. Okay, when I press down this treadle, you can see right at the back that the shaft, that the jack and lamb assembly has moved up and out of position. So yeah, it might seem counterintuitive, but I swear there's a logic to it. When you press down on the treadle, the connected shafts rise up, and now the weft thread is going to go underneath all the warp ends that have risen up. So the jack and lamb assembly is a really important part. Take really good care of your jack and lamb assemblies, because you absolutely do not want to have to replace them. It's kind of a mess. And it's kind of a mess to replace a jack and lamb assembly, because you have to basically unbuild a great proportion of the loom. You have to take these bolts out. You have to take this rear castle cross out. You have to lift everything off the top. Take good care of them. Okay. Another moving part during the weaving process is the beater. So the beater has two jobs. It separates your warp ends for any given cloth at a specific dent or number of ends per inch. You'll see this abbreviated as EPI. So you thread this, and it spaces out the warp ends at the set you want, and then while you're weaving, you move this whole thing back and forth so that the front of the beater, the bottom of the beater, can beat the weft ends into place. You can also, and this is something I dearly, dearly love about shack looms, you can also run your shuttle across the beater bottom. And in fact, this front part of it is often referred to as a beater race, because you just shoop and your shuttle goes all the way across. It's really cool. Oh, and one additional little thing that I want to mention, because it can make life much easier, especially when you're using multiple shuttles, is this trap. For all big shack looms, all the wolf looms and all the standard floor looms, there are traps available to fit the size of the loom. And whenever you're doing a project that requires more than one shuttle, a trap is a huge benefit, because you can set the shuttle you're not using in the trap, but it's just right there when you're ready for the next step. So I'm going to stop this video for now and do a separate one just to look at the tensioning setup, because that is, again, one of the most important jobs of any loom, and it deserves special attention.